The Empire's mistake. The Galactic Empire considered Earth a trivial conquest, just another primitive planet folded into its endless dominion, its people barely worth notice beyond the extraction of labor and resources. Its cities, rebuilt in the Empire's cold, metallic style, stood as monuments to control. The occupiers believed they had crushed humanity's spirit. They were wrong. In the heart of Earth's new Moscow, deep within the old forest that even orbital scans couldn't fully chart, stood a tiny, forgotten shrine. A crooked little thing, wooden icons blackened by time, rusted charms swaying in the wind, the scent of ancient herbs still clinging to the stones. It was a relic of old Earth, one no longer mentioned in imperial history feeds. But some still remembered. The elders, the villagers, the ones who whispered at night when the moons were thin. And on this day, the Empire made its fatal mistake. The inspection team arrived without warning. Black-armored Imperial soldiers fanned out across the settlement, their plasma rifles held high, faces hidden behind mirrored visors. At their center was Lord Kveros of House Drazzle, his violet Imperial robes trailing behind him, his expression one of utter boredom. Such quaint decay, Kveros muttered, glancing at the makeshift homes, the stubborn vegetable gardens, the ancient wooden shrine at the village center. This is why these creatures must be ruled. The villagers gathered in silence. They knew better than to resist. They had seen what happened when the Empire's patience ran thin. But one figure moved forward. An old woman, bent and wrinkled, her hair white as ash, her eyes impossibly sharp. She wore an ancient patchwork shawl embroidered with symbols no outsider could read. She stood before the shrine and placed her withered hands on the cracked wood. "Leave this place," the woman rasped in a voice like rusted wind. "This is not yours." Lord Kveros blinked, then let out a sharp laugh. "Is that so? You dare address the Empire with demands?" He stepped forward. Without ceremony, without hesitation, he struck her across the face with the back of his gloved hand. The crack of the blow echoed through the silent village. The old woman fell to her knees, but did not cry out. She merely touched her bruised cheek and smiled faintly. Kveros sneered. "Tear the shrine down. Burn it." Soldiers moved without question. Wooden charms were smashed under armored boots. Old icons were cast aside like trash. One soldier set the first flame. The dry timber caught easily. The villagers watched in mute horror. Some wept. Some crossed themselves with ancient gestures. The old woman rose slowly, her face still turned toward the burning shrine. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "2 nights," she whispered. "That is all you have left." Kveros froze. Something in her voice, a resonance that bypassed the mind and struck the primal parts of the soul, sent a ripple of unease through him. For a brief, irrational moment, he shivered. "Take her into custody," he snapped. "Enough of this nonsense." But when the soldiers reached for her, she was gone. Simply gone. No sound, no movement, just empty space where she had stood. The villagers began to murmur prayers in Old Russian, in Slavic dialects long banned by the Empire. Kveros swallowed hard, scanned for cloaking fields, neural disruptors, something, but the scanners showed nothing. The woman hadn't used technology. She had disappeared, in the truest, oldest sense of the word. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in bruised purples. The smell of burning wood filled the air, but the soldiers stood restless, glancing over their shoulders, their grips tightening on their weapons. The villagers said nothing more. They simply waited. That night, as Kveros' transport lifted off, the sensors briefly picked up an anomaly. A massive heat signature, organic and metallic, somewhere deep in the woods. Something that shouldn't exist. Then it vanished without trace. On the flight back to orbit, Kveros poured himself synthetic wine, hands slightly trembling. He told himself it was nothing. Superstition. Glitches. Humans were always full of myths. And yet, as the stars wheeled overhead, he could not shake the sound of that old woman's voice. 2 nights. The first night. The first signs of disaster appeared before midnight. From orbit, Admiral Saren of the Imperial Fleet observed the planet through his command ship's grand viewport. Earth was insignificant, blue, green, fragile. He barely glanced at the report flashing on his data slab. Minor disturbance in Sector 9. Local resistance suspected. Possible biosign interference. He dismissed it. The Empire did not lose to farmers and fairy tales. On the surface, it began quietly. Soldiers stationed in the ruined village set up perimeter drones and automatic turrets. They huddled near campfires, grumbling about superstition. But by the time the second moon rose, fear had already taken root. The first patrol vanished without a trace. For soldiers in exo armor, simply disappeared from every visual and audio feed. No gunfire, no distress call. One moment they were there, next gone. Then the screams began. The second squad sent to investigate found only blood. Thick, wet smears on the trees. Weapons snapped like brittle twigs. Scanners glitched wildly, showing impossible readings. Life signatures in the negative, gravitational inversions, quantum echoes. The lieutenant in charge tried to call for extraction, but could only babble incoherently before communications cut off. In orbit, Admiral Saren's frustration deepened. Send in heavy armor, he ordered. Deploy orbital drones. Crush whatever this is. Dozens of steel-plated walkers and aerial drones swept the forests, their weapons primed to incinerate anything that moved. But as they advanced deeper, their feeds turned surreal. Cameras showed twisted, impossible landscapes, trees that bent at wrong angles, skies bleeding red. Soldiers reported hearing whispers in old tongues, seeing faces in the fog. Some screamed that the forest itself was alive, moving, watching. In one chilling transmission, a mech pilot shrieked as his machine twisted in on itself. Metal crumpling like paper, his flesh warping in impossible ways. His last words, transmitted through static, were, the hut walks. One by one, the signals went dead. No survivors. No explanation. In the villages, the human settlers kept to their homes, doors barred, candles lit. They murmured ancient prayers passed down for generations. They knew the stories. They knew who had awakened. And they knew she had only just begun. By dawn, Admiral Saren had lost 4 strike teams, 12 mechanized walkers, and contact with the main ground base. Desperation edged into his voice as he barked orders. The Empire had crushed entire civilizations with ease. This could not be real. He demanded planetary scans. Every satellite, every probe focused on the forested region. And for one terrible instant they saw it. A shape, vast and monstrous, moving beneath the trees. Something half machine, half nightmare. A hut on giant chicken-like legs, creaking and groaning as it walked. Its wooden frame was fused with twisted metal, bone, and organic growth. Antennae bristled from its roof like antlers. The eyes of skulls glowed faintly from its eaves. And in the doorway, leaning on her crooked staff, stood the old woman. Baba Yaga. The image lasted less than a second before the feeds collapsed into static. Panic now gripped the Imperial command. Lord Kveros, pale and shaking, demanded evacuation. He clutched a bottle of stimulant wine, hands trembling uncontrollably. "This is madness," he hissed. "A trick, some kind of human bioweapon." But deep down, he remembered her words. 2 nights. He ordered orbital bombardment, planetary sterilization protocols. If they burned the forest, this nightmare would end. Admiral Saren, though shaken, followed procedure. The Empire did not negotiate. Precision strikes began, plasma torpedoes tearing through atmosphere, targeting the forest's heart. But nothing landed. The weapons vanished mid-descent. Every last missile, every rail cannon slug gone. Erased, as if the very laws of physics bent around the target. One of the officers murmured, voice barely audible, "Witchcraft." Kveros slapped him. "We're the Empire. We don't believe in." He never finished. The command bridge lights flickered. Every screen shifted into monochrome. The face of the old woman, her empty, black eyes, appeared on every console, every visor, every wall, and her voice, soft as death, whispered through every speaker. One night remains. That night, Imperial officers did not sleep. On Earth, the winds howled. In orbit, the stars seemed to dim. Something ancient had awakened, and the Empire, so proud, so unshakable, had begun to unravel. The second night began with silence. The kind of silence that pressed against the skin, that crawled inside the bones, that made even machines hesitate. The vast Galactic Empire, with its countless fleets, AI war engines, and iron dominion over half the known galaxy, now stood still, paralyzed by something it could neither name nor fight. On Earth, the Imperial ground forces were no more. Entire garrisons had vanished overnight. Not killed, not bombarded, gone, as if they'd never existed. Admiral Saren stood alone in the dimmed command deck of the ISS Triumphant, his uniform disheveled, eyes hollow. Screens flickered useless static. Sensor readings made no sense. Negative mass signatures, time anomalies, echoes of gravitational waves where none should exist. Beside him, Lord Kveros was a shadow of the man who had struck the old woman. His noble robes were tattered. His breathing came in shallow bursts. He gripped the command rail with white-knuckled terror, mumbling, "We should have left. I told you we should have left." But there was nowhere to run now. Not for them. Not for the Empire. The red moon climbed higher. Down on the planet, the villagers gathered in hushed awe. From the darkened forest, it came, the hut. Towering, surreal, obscene in its shape and wrongness. Giant, talon-like legs lifted its massive, bone-plated house body with impossible grace. The walls of the hut shifted constantly, wood becoming metal, metal becoming flesh, flesh becoming writhing roots, and back again. Eyes, too many eyes, blinked from its warped surface. At its threshold stood Baba Yaga. Her form was both real and not, an ancient crone, wrapped in rotting shawls and iron-threaded robes, but also something colossal and eldritch, a being older than stars, her face only a mask for the cosmic storm beneath. The villagers did not run. They fell to their knees and wept, some out of fear, some out of relief. For Baba Yaga did not come for them. She came for the Empire. Admiral Saren's trembling voice called for reinforcements. Distress signals blared across the star lanes. Dozens of nearby Imperial fleets moved to respond. None arrived. Ships in warp space reported impossible barriers, corridors of darkness that folded back upon themselves. Entire flotillas vanished mid-jump, never to re-emerge. Then, in the black of space, something shifted. A rift tore open above Earth, silent, vast, and wrong. Not a wormhole, not a natural anomaly. It was shaped like a jagged mouth, lined with flickering red teeth of light. From its depths, whispers poured. Languages older than time, words not meant for living minds. The ISS Triumphant's crew screamed as the rift's influence touched them. Blood leaked from eyes and ears. Cybernetic implants shorted. Automated systems crashed. And in every mind, one thought burned. The second night, Baba Yaga's voice echoed through every channel, every device, every neural feed. The house walks. The storm comes. Judgment falls. And so it did. The hut, now monstrously large, each step shaking the planet, rose into the sky, its impossible legs carrying it higher and higher. Around it, reality twisted. The air shimmered with arcane fire. Gravity turned inside out. The clouds boiled in unnatural spirals. The Empire's last ground units fired. Plasma beams, railgun rounds, antimatter warheads. None of it mattered. The attacks simply vanished mid-air, eaten by invisible mouths. In orbit, Admiral Saren ordered the ultimate sanction, planetary sterilization, the total destruction of Earth itself. But the command codes failed. The ship's engines froze. The weapons refused to fire. Instead, the flagship systems lit up with a new countdown. No one had entered it. No one knew what it meant. And at the center of the bridge, as if conjured from the air, the image of the old woman's face appeared, smiling. On the planet below, Lord Kveros fell to his knees. He saw it now. The Empire, his mighty empire, was not facing a rebel, a terrorist, or even an ancient human weapon. They had awakened something far older, something cosmic, something sacred and monstrous. Baba Yaga was not a myth. She was a force of nature, a guardian of cosmic balance, a being whose slumber they had shattered. And the punishment was written in stars older than memory. The hut stepped forward once more. The rift widened, and the second night consumed everything. The extinction. The final dawn rose over Earth beneath a sky that was no longer blue. The heavens churned with unnatural clouds, colors that had no name, shapes that defied geometry. The sun shone dim and sickly, as though the planet itself no longer lay in the same universe. The Galactic Empire, for all its fleets, its weapons, its digital mines, was already dead. Its flagships drifted silently, adrift and lifeless. Its command networks blinked out, one by one, like candles in a wind that no technology could stop. On the ground, the hut stood still at the center of a vast crater, its giant, taloned legs rooted deep into the earth, its grotesque walls pulsing faintly as if breathing. The villagers kept their distance, kneeling in terrified reverence. None dared approach, and at the threshold, her form outlined against the rising blood-colored sun, stood Baba Yaga. Her eyes, black, endless voids, watched the sky without blinking. In orbit, Lord Kveros stumbled through the ruined remains of the ISS Triumphant. Alarms blared. The corridors were choked with dead crew. Some had taken their own lives. Others had simply stopped, frozen in place, as if time itself had broken. Kveros' mind shattered somewhere between fear and madness. His once pristine uniform was torn and filthy. His breathing came in gasps. His hands clutched uselessly at the walls as he made his way toward the escape pod bay, only to find every hatch melted, every control panel overwritten by impossible symbols. Dark runes flickering in ancient Slavic script that no Imperial AI could decipher. On every screen, her face waited, silent, smiling. The countdown neared 0. "Please," he whispered. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "We didn't know. We didn't." No reply, only the sound of wind. Somehow, he could hear wind even here in the vacuum of space. The last thing he saw before the screens went black was the shadow of the hut, impossibly vast now, rising into the stars. Across the Empire's far-flung colonies, the destruction was already spreading. Entire fleets stopped responding. Civilizations dependent on Imperial AI governance found themselves plunged into chaos as systems crashed without explanation. On distant worlds, soldiers woke screaming from dreams of walking forests, burning eyes, and the creaking legs of a house that stalked between worlds. The collapse wasn't just military. It was existential. Somehow, impossibly, the very idea of the Empire, its symbols, its structure, its control, was unraveling, as though something had reached backward through time and cut the thread of its existence. A plague of myth had infected reality. On Earth, Baba Yaga's task was nearly done. The villagers watched as the hut slowly folded in on itself. Legs creaking, walls twisting, the grotesque fusion of wood, bone, and metal collapsing into nothingness. The ancient crone stood in the center of the now silent crater, leaning on her iron staff. Then she moved, slowly, without haste. She walked past the kneeling villagers, her bare feet leaving no prints in the blackened soil. Some wept. Some dared to reach out, but her shadow passed over them without pause. At the forest's edge, she stopped and looked back only once. Her voice, when it came, was no louder than a breath, but it carried across the wind. Balance is restored. And then she was gone, vanished between the trees. The leaves stirred. The silence returned. In orbit, the ISS Triumphant detonated in complete silence. No flames, no debris. Just absence. And with its destruction, the last command node of the Galactic Empire fell. Within hours, every Imperial governance AI across the galaxy failed. Worlds once enslaved rose up, the chains of digital oppression crumbling without resistance. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries became derelicts. The proud banners of the regime vanished from existence, as though they had never been. The Empire did not fall in a war. It was erased. In 2 days, just as she promised. Years later, when the scattered remnants of humanity began to rebuild, they spoke of what had happened with reverence and fear. Children learned the old stories again, of Baba Yaga, the witch of the woods, the keeper of balance, who punished the arrogant and protected the sacred. Some said she was still out there, somewhere, watching. Some claimed to hear her laughter in the wind. But all agreed on one thing. The stars remembered, and no empire, no matter how vast, would ever forget the price of awakening the witch.